want to start today by throwing a word at you. It's a word that looks a little intimidating on the page. Lots of consonants, looks very old world. But it basically explains an entire century of history for one specific community here in Canada.
I think I know the word you're looking at in the notes. Is it Pichilbari?
That's the one! Pichilbari!
It sounds heavy, doesn't it?
It is a heavy word. And, well, it carries a heavy history.
Yeah, digging into this document we have today titled Proudly Canadian Macedonian, it feels like we're looking at a blueprint for how a community, survives. We aren't just talking about immigration in the standard sense. We're talking about a very specific type of grit.
Mm-hmm.
But before we get to the Super Bowl parties and concerts happening right now, in 2026, we have to unpack this term. What exactly is a Pichilbar?
Well, if you pull out a dictionary, a loose translation would be something like seasonal worker.
Yeah.
But that really doesn't capture the emotional weight of it.
Yeah.
Not in the Macedonian context.
We aren't talking about someone doing a summer internship. These were men, almost exclusively men, who left their villages in the Balkans to travel, thousands of miles to places like Canada to earn money to send back home.
So they were the economic lifeline for the family back home.
Exactly. They were effectively living in two places at once. Their bodies were in the factories or kitchens of Toronto, but their minds and their wallets were back in a village in the mountains. They were the pioneer generation.
And when we talk about immigrants to Canada, I feel like we usually default to that 1950s post-war boom. That's sort of the standard narrative.
It is, but our sources point out that the foundation of the Canadian Macedonian identity was actually laid much, much earlier. We're talking about the early 1900s.
Okay.
Specifically, that window between 1903 and 1912.
So pre-World War I.
Precisely. And unlike later waves, where whole families might come at once, these early arrivals were often those Pichilbari we mentioned. They arrived alone with one single goal.
Right. And they didn't just stay in the factories.
No. And that's the interesting part.
This is the part of the document that really stood out to me. It mentions they settled in places like Cabbagetown and the Danforth in Toronto. Now, for anyone listening who knows Toronto today, those are, they're trendy, expensive neighborhoods.
$1 million homes, yeah. They definitely weren't trendy in 1905. They were working class, often boarding house districts. It was rough. And these men, they lived lean. The source highlights this concept of the 18-hour day.
That stuck out to me, too. It wasn't just work hard. It sounds more like a strategy.
It was an investment strategy.
Wow.
They transitioned incredibly quickly from being laborers, working for someone else, to being entrepreneurs.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they opened diners, restaurants, butcher shops.
The classic greasy spoon diner.
The archetype of it. But think about why. A diner is a cash business. You can feed yourself. You can, employ your cousin who just arrived and doesn't speak English yet. The source material calls these businesses the hearth.
The hearth. I like that. It implies warmth, gathering. It's more than just commerce.
Precisely. These weren't just businesses. They were unofficial community centers. In an era before social media or cheap long-distance calls, the butcher shop or the diner was where you went to get news.
I see.
If someone got a letter from the village, they'd read it at the diner.
It creates this image of a real network. But speaking of the village, this is a nuance I think is really important. The source makes it clear that their identity wasn't just Macedonian in a broad national sense. It was hyper-local.
It's extremely granular. We're talking about regions like Larin, Kostur, Bitola, but even deeper specific villages. Boof, Armensko, Bedica.
And they actually formalized this, right? It wasn't just, I'm from Boof too.
No, they built village associations. Think of these as a proto-social safety net. Or like a mutual aid society.
Like a localized GoFundMe, but institutionalized.
That's a great way to put it. If someone got sick or died, or if the village back home needed a bridge built, the association handled it. It allowed them to be philanthropists in Canada while directly impacting the infrastructure back home.
Wow.
It bridged that gap between the here and the there.
So you have this economic foundation, the diners, the hard work. You have the social structure, the village associations. But then you hit the cultural layer, and that seems a bit more complicated.
It is complicated.
Yeah.
Especially the language.
Yeah.
And it's central to understanding their resilience. The source talks about language as a badge of survival.
Survival implies a threat. Why was the language threatened?
Well, a lot of these immigrants came from Aegean Macedonia, which geographically is northern Greece. And historically, the Slavic dialects spoken there were heavily suppressed.
Right.
There were periods where speaking your mother tongue was actually illegal.
So speaking it in your own kitchen in Toronto wasn't just communication, it was defiance.
The notes call it silent resistance.
Mm.
By keeping the dialect alive at home, through lullabies, through dinner table conversation, they were preserving a history that was being erased on the map back in Europe.
A form of protest that nobody hears but the family. But there's also a distinction made here between those specific village dialects and the standard Macedonian language.
Right. The standard language, the literary version, is a huge point of pride. The Cyrillic alphabet itself, which is used by Russians, Bulgarians, Serbs, it roots back to the Ohrid literary school in Macedonia.
So they don't just use the alphabet, they feel like they hold the patent on it.
In a cultural sense, yes. It's deeply tied to their identity, and you see that pride in action today. The source mentions Saturday morning language schools.
Which I found interesting because, usually second or third generations run away from Saturday school.
It's the thing you complain about as a kid.
Yeah, it's a chore.
But here, it's framed as passing the baton. You have classes at St. Clement of Ohrid or St. Nadella churches. It's an active effort to ensure the silent resistance doesn't just become silence. They're teaching the next generation not just how to speak, but why they speak it.
So language is the software, but the hardware, the physical expression of the culture, that's the dance, the oro.
You cannot have a Macedonian gathering without the oro. It's a circle dance. But the source zooms in on one specific dance, the Dikato.
The name sounds intense.
It translates roughly to the hard one or the heavy one.
The heavy one, that's not exactly a fun party dance name. Hey everyone, let's do the heavy one.
No, it's not meant to be fun in the sense of, a disco track. It's deeply symbolic. It starts very slow, very solemn. The dancers, traditionally men, balance on one leg, moving with this agonizingly slow control.
What does that represent?
It represents the struggle,
Yeah.
the weight of history, the Pachelbari leaving home, the wars, the suppression.
And does it stay slow?
No, that's the thing. Eventually it releases. It becomes something faster and more energetic. It's almost a physical reenactment of resilience. You endure the heavy times to get to the freedom.
You dance through the pain to get to the joy.
You got it.
That's powerful, and it happens predictably at the church.
The church is the cornerstone. But we need to update our definition of church here. It's not just a place you go for an hour on Sunday.
It's the venue for everything.
Everything. The source lists traditions like Badnik, that's Christmas Eve in Villagedon, for Easter, but these are social markers as much as religious ones.
Mm-hmm.
The church hall is where the community sees itself. It's the town square.
And where the community feeds itself. We have to talk about the food. The document calls it pride served on a plate.
I love that line. But again, it's not just about eating, it's about the labor of food. Take ajvar.
Oh, the red pepper spread. I've had that.
Right. But if you just buy a jar at the grocery store, you are missing the point.
Okay, explain the point for me.
Making ajvar is an event. It takes bushels of peppers, roasting them, peeling them, which is messy and hot, grinding them, simmering the mash for hours and hours. You can't really do it alone.
It's a team sport.
It's an autumnal ritual that binds the family together through manual labor. It's the Pachelbari work ethic applied to condiments.
I like that.
And the payoff is that taste of home in the middle of a Canadian winter. Then you have something like Maznik the pastry. Hand-stretched layers. It's tactile. You have to learn the feel of the dough from your grandmother. You can't learn that from a YouTube video.
So we have this very intense, very specific cultural package. Heavy dances, labor-intensive food, a language that was fought for. But these people are living in Toronto, one of the most multicultural modern cities on Earth. How does that not clash?
This is the most fascinating insight in the document. They call it double pride.
Double pride, not split loyalty.
No, it really challenges the idea that you have to choose. The argument is that the Canadian environment, specifically the policy of multiculturalism, actually allowed them to be better Macedonians.
How so?
They could be fully Canadian citizens, thriving in the economy while keeping their Macedonianness completely intact.
They didn't have to melt into the pot.
They added a distinct ingredient to the pot. And you see this double pride manifesting in really interesting arenas, like sports.
This part surprised me. The connection between Balkan history and, say, hockey.
It makes sense if you think about it. The source talks about a toughness or a grit that's inherent in the Balkan spirit. If you come from a lineage of people who survived suppression and worked 18-hour days, you probably have the mental fortitude to be a grinder in the NHL.
Or a boxer.
Right. There's a specific pride when the community sees a name ending in Uovsky or Erv, on a jersey. It validates that the struggle translated into success here.
It's validation, and they've built institutions to support this. We mentioned the village associations, but there are bigger bodies too.
The United Macedonians of Canada. And look at the longevities. Cyril and Methody Cathedral is preparing for its 116th year.
116 years? That's older than some provinces.
It puts the immigrant label in perspective, doesn't it? They aren't new arrivals. They are foundational to the city's history. They helped build the city.
Okay, so that's the history. That's the theory of double pride. But I want to see what this looks like right now, today. Because the source material isn't just a history book, it's a community calendar.
It is. We are recording this deep dive in early February 2026. And if you look at the schedule for this month, you see that double pride perfectly in action.
Let's look at this coming weekend. Sunday, February 8th.
Super Bowl Sunday, the holiest day on the North American sporting calendar.
And where's the community?
They're at St. Clement of Orded.
At the church.
At the church hall, hosting a Super Bowl watch party.
See, that's the synthesis right there. You're watching American football, probably eating pizza and wings, but you're doing it in the cultural sanctuary of the Macedonian community.
And the note suggests this is a prime spot for, man-on-the-street interviews. It's loud, it's informal, it's where business gets done, where introductions happen. It's the modern version of that diner counter we talked about from 1905.
The setting has changed, but the function is the same. But then, just 5 days later, the vibe does a complete 180. February 13th.
The Jordan Michev concert.
This is described as a kafanska večer. What does that mean to the listener who has never been to the Balkans?
So a kafana is a traditional tavern, but kafana-style music implies something visceral. It's not a polite recital where you sit with your hands in your lap.
Right.
It's boisterous, emotional. It's singing along, clinking glasses, maybe getting up and dancing on the tables if the mood strikes.
So on Sunday, you're cheering for a touchdown, and on Friday, you're singing folk songs about heartbreak and mountains.
And then, the very next day, Saturday the 14th, it shifts again.
Tadushnika.
Memorial Saturday. This is deeply Orthodox. It's a day dedicated to honoring the ancestors. You go to the graves, you light candles, you share food in memory of the dead.
It circles right back to the Petrobari we started with.
It does. You pause your modern life to acknowledge the people who made it possible. And it coincides with the Dormition of St. Cyril, one of the fathers of that alphabet we talked about.
And then Sunday the 15th is another religious feast. It is a packed calendar.
It is. But look at the range. Sports, raucous folk music, solemn prayer, religious ritual. It hits every single note of the human experience, all within 1 week.
All within one community. And amidst all this, on Saturday mornings, the kids are still learning to write Cyrillic.
The United Macedonian Diaspora, or UMD, has language classes running through March 6th. That's the future-proofing.
There's also a tease here for something happening in May.
The Holy Trinity Church is hitting its 50th anniversary, half a century, and they are collecting photos right now for a historical feature.
It really reinforces that this isn't a stagnant culture. It's building new history on top of the old.
That's the takeaway for me. We often think of heritage as something you keep in a glass case. You look at it, you dust it off once a year, but the Canadian-Macedonian model is different. Heritage is a verb.
It's contact sport.
It is. You have to do it. You have to make the Ajvar. You have to dance the Tekodo. You have to show up to the Super Bowl party. If you stop performing the culture, it just disappears. It relies on participation.
The source document ends with a sentiment that I think is really poignant. It suggests that for the Peshobari, those lonely guys in 1903 saving every penny, the dream wasn't just money.
The dream was continuity. They suffered the separation so that their great-grandchildren could have the luxury of double pride. They worked the 18-hour days so that the community in 2026 could have the time to dance.
It's a pretty incredible return on investment.
It is.
So if we zoom out, what does this all tell us about the concept of home? Because we usually think of home as a location, a dot on a map.
I think this deep dive teaches us that home is portable.
Portable.
Yeah. If your home is just a house or a specific village, you can lose it. You can be exiled, you can migrate. But if your home is a set of rituals, if home is the smell of roasted peppers in October and the steps of a circle dance and a specific alphabet, then you can take it anywhere.
You can plant it somewhere else.
You can plant it in Cabbage Town, you can plant it in the suburbs, and it will grow, as long as you keep doing the work.
As long as you keep the hearth burning, that's a fantastic place to leave it. From the mountains of the Balkans to the Super Bowl parties of Toronto, the beat goes on. Thanks for guiding us through this today.
My pleasure.
And to our listener, maybe take a look at your own calendar this week. What rituals are you performing? And who are you performing them for? Something to think about. We'll see you in the next deep dive.